The best lunch in town was not in a restaurant. It was behind the appliance counter at Montgomery Ward, where a woman in a white apron served you a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes for 60 cents. She poured the coffee before you sat down because she had watched you come in from the coat department, and she already knew. Number 14 on this list had a name that sounded like it came from a European hotel, but the Ward's kitchen made it with nothing more than stew meat and paprika. And number 6 on this list crossed an ocean before it ended up on a department store steam table in the middle of Indiana. These meals were made from scratch behind a wall you never saw, and not one of them survived the century. Here are 25 iconic Montgomery Ward cafeteria meals that vanished forever. Number 25. Tamale pie. A layer of seasoned ground beef and kidney beans spread across the bottom of a baking dish, topped with a cornmeal batter and baked until the crust turned golden and pulled away from the edges. Ward's cafeteria tamale pie was not a tamale, and nobody pretended otherwise. It was Midwestern cooking wearing a borrowed name, the kind of dish that showed up on church supper tables and school lunch trays across the country during the same decades. The filling was simple: ground beef, canned tomatoes, onion, chili powder, and a handful of sliced black olives that nobody expected, and everybody either picked around or ate first depending on which kind of person they were. The cornmeal top was dense and slightly sweet, and it absorbed the juice from the meat below until the whole thing tasted like one dish instead of two layers pretending to get along. Number 24. Fish sticks with tartar sauce. Every Friday, the cafeteria line had fish sticks. Golden, rectangular, lined up on the plate like little soldiers next to a scoop of coleslaw and a wedge of lemon nobody squeezed. The breading was thick and crunchy, and the fish inside was mild enough that children who hated fish ate 3 of them without complaint. Tartar sauce came in a small paper cup, and most people used all of it before they were halfway through. Ward's did not invent the fish stick, but they understood what it was for. It was the meal that made Friday feel different from Thursday, even if you were not Catholic and had no religious reason to skip the meatloaf. Before I continue, this one is for the people who want these kinds of recipes collected in one spot. I put together the Vintage Recipe Guide, a book full of meals like the ones on this list, the kind worth making again. You can find it on my website, vintagelifestyleusa.com. I will not mention it again. If it sounds like something you would use, it is there. Now, back to the list. Number 23. Corned beef hash. Canned corned beef broken apart and fried in a skillet with diced potatoes and onions until the bottom turned crisp and dark. Ward's served it with a poached egg on top and 2 slices of toast on the side. The egg was the difference between breakfast and lunch. At the cafeteria counter, it counted as either one depending on what time you walked in. The hash was cooked on a flat griddle in the back, pressed down with a spatula until the bottom developed a crust, then flipped in sections and pressed again. The potatoes were soft inside and browned outside, and the corned beef had that particular salty tang that canned meat carries, a flavor a fresh roast never quite matches. Yet men who worked with their hands ordered it because it was fast, filling, and the salt replaced what they had sweated out by noon. Number 22. Welsh Rarebit. A thick cheese sauce made from sharp cheddar, butter, flour, dry mustard, and a splash of Worcestershire, poured over toast and run under the broiler until the cheese bubbled and browned at the edges. Ward served it as a lunch special with a small cup of tomato soup on the side. Welsh Rarebit had an old-fashioned name that confused half the people who ordered it. They expected rabbit. What they got was melted cheese on bread that somehow tasted more substantial than it looked. The mustard was what made it work, cutting through the richness of the cheddar so you could eat the whole plate without feeling weighed down. Women on their lunch break ordered it because it was light enough to eat quickly while flipping through the catalog they had picked up on the way to the counter. Number 21. Breaded pork chop plate. A bone-in pork chop dredged in seasoned flour, dipped in egg, pressed into breadcrumbs, and fried in a cast-iron skillet until the coating turned dark gold. Ward's served it with applesauce on the side and a scoop of buttered corn. The chop was thin, not the thick-cut kind you see in restaurants now, and the speed was what made it work. A thin chop fried fast and stayed crispy from the first bite to the last. The applesauce was from a jar, cold and smooth, and it cut through the grease in a way that made the next bite of pork taste even better. Nobody at that counter was thinking about food science. They just knew that cold fruit and hot grease belonged on the same plate. A department store cafeteria was a strange thing if you stopped to think about it. You walked in to buy a set of socket wrenches or a winter coat, and somewhere between the second floor and the exit, you sat down and ate a plate of food cooked by someone you would never meet. The kitchen was behind a wall. The menu was on a board above the counter. You picked up a tray, pointed at what you wanted, and sat at a table still warm from the last person who sat there. But that was the beauty of it. The cafeteria was not a restaurant. It was not a home kitchen. It was the place between those two things, where a stranger made you lunch and you did not have to explain what kind of day you were having. You just ate. Number 20. American chop suey, elbow macaroni, ground beef, canned tomatoes, green pepper, and onion, all cooked together in one pot until the noodles went soft and the sauce turned thick and clung to everything. Ward served it in a shallow bowl with a piece of garlic bread on the side. The name had nothing to do with Chinese cooking, and everything to do with the American habit of calling anything in a pot with more than 4 ingredients some version of something foreign. In New England, they called it American chop suey. In the Midwest, they called it goulash. At the Ward's cafeteria, they just called it the Tuesday Special, and the customers who ordered it did not care about the name as long as the noodles were hot and the bread was buttered. Number 19. Baked ham steak with pineapple ring. A thick, cross-cut slice of smoked ham scored on both sides and baked with a ring of canned pineapple on top, glazed with brown sugar and a little mustard. Ward's served it with scalloped potatoes and a spoonful of buttered green beans, and the plate looked better than anything else behind the glass. The pineapple ring was not decoration. When it baked alongside the ham, the juice from the fruit mixed with the sugar glaze and the salt from the meat and turned into a sauce that nobody scraped off. The ring itself went soft and warm and sweet, and most people ate it last after the ham was gone, like a small reward for finishing the plate. Ham steak was a cafeteria dish that bridged two worlds. At home, a woman might bake an entire ham for a holiday and spend an hour at the stove. At the cafeteria, the same flavor arrived in 10 minutes because the kitchen had already done the work that morning. A staff of 6 or 7 women cooked enough food to serve hundreds between 11 and 2, and they did it by starting at dawn and timing every dish to land on the steam table at the right moment. The ham was one of the first things into the oven. By the time the doors opened, the glaze had set and the pineapple juice had caramelized along the scored edges. A customer at 11:30 got a plate that had been resting for 20 minutes. A customer at 1 o'clock got the same plate held at temperature, and it still tasted like it had just come from the oven. That consistency was a skill, and the women who ran those kitchens had spent years learning it. Number 18. Navy bean soup with ham. White navy beans simmered for hours with a ham bone, diced carrot, celery, onion, and a bay leaf until the beans went soft and the broth turned cloudy and thick. Ward's served it in a heavy bowl with a square of cornbread on a separate plate. The cornbread was always warm because it came out of the oven every 45 minutes in rotation. Navy bean soup was the cheapest item on the menu to produce and one of the most popular to order. A ham bone that would have been thrown away after the morning's ham prep went into the pot and flavored enough soup to serve for 2 days. The beans cost almost nothing by the pound. The labor was time, not technique, which meant the newest cook in the kitchen could make it, and the result was always the same. Number 17. Breaded veal cutlet. A thin slice of veal pounded flat, dredged in seasoned flour, dipped in beaten egg, pressed into fine breadcrumbs, and fried until the coating turned deep gold. Ward's served it with a wedge of lemon, mashed potatoes, and a ladle of brown gravy on the side. The cutlet was thin enough that the breading made up half the bite, which was not a flaw. The crunch was the whole experience. Veal cutlets were a cafeteria staple in an era when veal was common and affordable. Butcher shops stocked it alongside the pork chops, and a cafeteria could buy it at a price that made sense for a lunch plate. The lemon was not optional. A squeeze of it over the hot breading released a smell that carried across the dining area, and more than one customer changed their order after catching it from 2 tables away. Number 16. Cheese Dreams, an open-faced sandwich. A slice of white bread topped with a thick layer of sharp cheddar, a thin slice of tomato if the kitchen had one, and a strip of bacon laid across the top, then run under the broiler until the cheese melted and the bacon curled. Ward's served it with a pickle spear and a cup of tomato soup. The name was old. Cheese Dreams had been in American cookbooks since the early 20th century, and by the time Ward's cafeterias were serving them, the name was so familiar that nobody thought about what it meant. It was just what you called a broiled cheese sandwich that came with bacon. Children ordered them because they were small enough to finish. Adults ordered them because they were cheap enough to add a bowl of soup and still walk away feeling like they had spent next to nothing. Number 15. Creamed eggs on toast. Hard-boiled eggs sliced in half, nested in a thick white sauce flavored with salt, pepper, and a pinch of paprika, poured over 2 slices of buttered toast. Ward's served it as a breakfast plate and a lunch plate depending on the day, and it cost less than almost anything else on the board. Creamed eggs were a dish that made people uncomfortable to describe but not to eat. The combination of egg and white sauce sounded plain to the point of being dull, but the paprika gave it a warmth that plain eggs never had, and the toast soaked up the sauce until it became something closer to bread pudding than a sandwich. Nobody bragged about ordering it, and everybody cleaned the plate. Number 14. Hungarian Goulash. Cubed beef browned in a heavy pot with a generous amount of paprika, onion, garlic, and a can of tomatoes, simmered low until the beef went tender and the sauce turned rust red. Ward's served it over a bed of wide egg noodles with a dinner roll on the side. The paprika was the thing that set it apart from ordinary beef stew. It gave the sauce a color that nothing else on the line could match, somewhere between red and brown, and a flavor that sat in the back of your mouth long after you finished eating. Hungarian goulash showed up on American cafeteria menus in the years after the Second World War, when returning soldiers and immigrant families brought home a taste for flavors they had encountered overseas. The dish was not authentically Hungarian by any standard a cook in Budapest would have recognized. The sour cream was missing. The caraway was missing. But the paprika was there, and in a cafeteria where the other options were meatloaf and fish sticks, that paprika made goulash taste like something from another continent. The Ward's version used stew meat, the cheapest cut in the case, and the long simmer turned it soft enough to cut with a fork. The noodles were cooked soft because cafeteria noodles were always cooked soft, and the sauce soaked into them until every forkful carried both meat and starch. Nobody ordered goulash and then walked the store for another 2 hours. They ordered it, and they sat, and they let the paprika do what paprika does, which is make ordinary beef taste like somebody went to real trouble. The women on the line could tell the goulash customers from the salad customers by how long they stayed. A salad plate was gone in 10 minutes. A plate of goulash took 20. The women who worked behind the Ward's cafeteria counter rarely got mentioned by name. They wore white uniforms and hairnets, and they stood on their feet for 8 hours straight, portioning mashed potatoes with an ice cream scoop and slicing pie with a knife they had sharpened that morning. Most of them had cooked for their own families before they clocked in and would cook for them again when they got home. The cafeteria was not a career for most of these women. It was a job that used the one skill nobody had ever paid them for until now. They could feed people. They had been doing it their whole lives. The difference was that a department store finally handed them an apron and a paycheck and said, "Do what you already know how to do." Number 13. Turkey and dressing plate. Sliced roasted turkey breast fanned across the plate, a mound of bread dressing on the side, a ladle of turkey gravy over everything, and a spoonful of cranberry sauce from a can. Ward served this year-round, not just at Thanksgiving. The dressing was made from cubed white bread, celery, onion, sage, and poultry seasoning, baked in a sheet pan until the top was crusty and the inside was soft and savory. It was Thanksgiving on a Tuesday for the price of a sandwich somewhere else. A lot of retired men ate this plate once a week because it was the closest thing to the meal their wives used to make, and they never had to turn on an oven. The cranberry sauce was always from a can, still ridged from the tin, and nobody complained. Number 12. Corn fritters. Cornmeal batter mixed with canned cream corn, a beaten egg, and a spoonful of sugar, dropped by the tablespoon into hot oil and fried until the outside turned golden and the inside stayed soft and sweet. Wards served them 4 to a plate with a small pitcher of maple syrup and a side of bacon or sausage links. Corn fritters straddled the line between breakfast and lunch, between savory and sweet, and the cafeteria never bothered picking a side. They showed up on the morning menu and stayed through the afternoon because the batter held well and the fryer was already hot. The syrup was the key. Without it, a corn fritter was just fried cornbread. With it, the sweetness of the corn and the sweetness of the maple met somewhere in the middle and turned each fritter into something closer to a warm pastry than a side dish. Number 11. Split pea soup. Dried split peas simmered with a ham hock, diced carrots, onion, and celery until the peas dissolved into a thick green soup that coated the back of a spoon. Wards served it with a handful of oyster crackers and a piece of buttered bread. Split pea soup was a winter menu regular. It showed up in October and stayed through March, and the kitchen made it in batches large enough to fill a stock pot the size of a laundry basket. The ham hock did most of the work. It sat in the pot for hours, releasing salt and smoke into the peas until the broth turned savory enough to stand on its own without any extra seasoning. The color was the exact green of an army blanket, and it tasted considerably better than it looked. Number 10. Egg salad plate. Hard-boiled eggs chopped and mixed with mayonnaise, yellow mustard, salt, pepper, and a spoonful of sweet pickle relish, mounted on a bed of iceberg lettuce with tomato wedges and a dinner roll on the side. Ward's cafeteria egg salad was not fancy and made no attempt to be. The eggs were boiled that morning, and the salad was mixed by hand in a stainless bowl. The relish was what made it Ward's version and not just anybody's egg salad. It added a sweetness that cut through the mayonnaise and gave each bite something unexpected. Women ordered it when they wanted a light lunch before an afternoon of shopping. Men ordered it when the meatloaf line was too long and they had 15 minutes left. Number 9. Chopped sirloin steak plate. A thick, hand-formed patty of ground sirloin, seasoned with salt, pepper, and Worcestershire, seared on a flat griddle until the outside developed a dark crust and the inside stayed pink. Wards served it with a baked potato wrapped in foil, a pat of butter, and a side of green beans. The chopped sirloin was the cafeteria's attempt at a steakhouse plate, and it succeeded more often than it had any right to. The difference between this and an ordinary hamburger was the grind. Sirloin had less fat than chuck, which meant the patty held together on the griddle without shrinking, and the flavor was cleaner, more beef and less grease. The cook pressed it once with a spatula and then left it alone. A patty that got pressed twice lost its juice and turned into shoe leather. The baked potato came wrapped in foil because the cafeteria baked 30 of them every morning, and the foil kept them hot on the line. By 12:30, the potato inside was so soft that it split open when you squeezed the ends. The butter disappeared on contact. Chopped sirloin drew a different customer than the soup and sandwich crowd. These were the people who had come into the store to buy a washing machine or a piece of furniture, and the sirloin plate was their way of marking the occasion. They sat at the counter with a receipt in their pocket and a plate of steak and potato in front of them, and for 15 minutes they felt like they were sitting in a proper restaurant. The cook who worked the griddle knew those customers. They came in once a month, ordered the sirloin, and left a quarter on the counter even though tipping was not expected. When Montgomery Ward closed its doors for good, the shelves got stripped, the signs came down, and the building sat empty or turned into something else. But the thing people mention most is not the catalog or the appliances or the Christmas layaway counter. It is the cafeteria. Not the food itself exactly, though the food comes up. What they remember is the act of sitting down in the middle of a shopping trip and being handed a plate by a woman who did not know their name but knew what they wanted. That small, ordinary transaction, a hot plate and a clean fork and 5 minutes of quiet, turns out to be the thing that is hardest to replace. No food court in a modern mall has managed it. No drive-thru even attempts it. The cafeteria closed, and the ritual closed with it. Number 8. Barbecue beef on a bun. Shredded beef simmered in a sauce of ketchup, vinegar, brown sugar, Worcestershire, and onion, piled onto a soft white hamburger bun and served with a mound of coleslaw. The beef was slow-cooked the day before and pulled apart with 2 forks, then reheated in the sauce on the morning it was served. The flavor was sweet and sharp at the same time, and the bun soaked through on the bottom before most people were halfway done. Ward's barbecue beef was not Southern barbecue, and nobody claimed otherwise. There was no smoker and no pit. The sauce came together on a stovetop, and the beef came from whatever roast the kitchen had overcooked earlier in the week. A roast that dried out got a second life in that sauce, and the result was often better than the original. Number 7. Escalloped tomatoes. Canned tomatoes layered with cubes of day-old bread, butter, sugar, salt, and a little onion, baked until the bread absorbed the juice and the top turned golden and crusty. Ward served it as a side dish, but plenty of customers ordered it as their main course alongside a dinner roll and a cup of soup. Escalloped tomatoes confused people who had never grown up with them. The bread and tomato combination sounded wrong until you tasted it. The sugar took the edge off the acid, the butter made the bread rich, and the tomato juice turned the cubes soft and savory, like a stuffing that had been soaked in something better than broth. It was farm cooking, the kind of dish a woman made when the tomatoes were ripe and the bread was going stale because throwing away either one was not something she did. Number 6. Swedish meatballs over noodles. Small, round meatballs made from a mix of ground beef and ground pork, seasoned with nutmeg, allspice, and onion, browned in a skillet and simmered in a cream gravy, served over wide egg noodles. Ward's Cafeteria meatballs came 6 to a plate, each one about the size of a walnut, and the gravy was the color of coffee with too much cream stirred in. The nutmeg was what separated these from ordinary meatballs in brown gravy. It gave the sauce a warmth that you could not identify by taste alone, something that made you take another bite before you had finished chewing the first. The noodles were soft and wide, and they held the gravy in their folds like small, shallow bowls. Swedish meatballs traveled from Scandinavian kitchens to American cafeterias through church cookbooks, and by the time they reached the Ward's steam table, they had lost whatever was Swedish about them except the name and the nutmeg. Number 5. Baked cod with lemon butter. A thick fillet of Atlantic cod baked with a pat of butter, a squeeze of lemon, and a dusting of paprika, served with boiled parsley potatoes and a spoonful of coleslaw. Ward's offered it as a Friday special, and the line was longer on Fridays than any other day of the week because the Catholic customers who did not eat meat had limited choices, and the cod plate was the best one by a wide margin. The fish was mild and white, and it flaked apart when you pressed your fork into it. The lemon butter pooled on the plate, and most people used the dinner roll to mop it up at the end. Baked cod was a quiet dish. It sat on the plate looking plain and tasting clean, and the people who ordered it came back every Friday without considering anything else. Number 4. Chicken and dumplings. A whole chicken simmered in broth with celery, carrot, and onion until the meat fell off the bone, then pulled apart by hand and returned to the pot, where spoonfuls of biscuit dough were dropped onto the surface of the bubbling liquid and covered with a lid until the dumplings puffed up and cooked through. Ward's served it in a deep bowl with nothing else on the plate because nothing else was needed. The dumplings were the divide. Some locations made them flat and noodle-like, rolled and cut into strips. Others made them round and fluffy, closer to a biscuit than a pasta. The broth was thick from starch and gelatin, and it coated your mouth in a way that clear chicken soup never managed. This was a cold-weather dish that tasted like someone's mother had made it, even when that someone was a cafeteria cook you had never spoken to. Number 3. Stuffed cabbage rolls, blanched cabbage leaves wrapped around a filling of ground beef, rice, onion, and egg, nestled in a baking pan, covered with tomato sauce, and baked until the cabbage went translucent and the sauce thickened around the edges. Ward's served them 2 to a plate with a scoop of mashed potatoes and the extra sauce ladled on top. Stuffed cabbage rolls were a dish that Eastern European immigrants brought to the industrial Midwest and by the mid-20th century, they were as common on cafeteria steam tables as fried chicken. The tomato sauce was slightly sweet, and the rice inside expanded during baking until each roll held its shape when you cut it with the side of a fork. The cabbage leaf was soft and tender and tasted nothing like boiled cabbage usually does, which is why people who swore they hated cabbage ate both rolls without a word of protest. Number 2. Ham croquettes. Ground leftover ham mixed with a thick white sauce, shaped into ovals, rolled in breadcrumbs, and fried until the shell turned deep brown and shattered when you cut into it. Ward's served 2 croquettes per plate with creamed peas and a dinner roll. The inside was smooth and hot and tasted like ham that had been concentrated down to something richer than the original slice. Croquettes were the cafeteria kitchen's greatest invention. Every piece of leftover meat too small to slice went into the grinder, got bound with sauce, and came back out as something that looked and tasted deliberate. A customer who ordered ham croquettes had no idea they were eating yesterday's baked ham in a new form. The breadcrumb crust gave it a texture that made the whole plate feel crafted rather than rescued. Number 1. Meatloaf with mashed potatoes and gravy. Beef and breadcrumbs, a cracked egg, diced onion, salt, pepper, and a glaze of ketchup across the top, baked in a loaf pan until the edges caramelized and the center stayed tender. Ward's served a thick slice with a mountain of mashed potatoes, a ladle of brown gravy, and a side of green beans or buttered corn. Meatloaf was the dish that never left the menu. It was there on Monday and it was there on Friday, and it was there the last week the cafeteria was open. It did not need a foreign name or a complicated sauce or a story about where it came from. It came from everywhere. Every mother in the country made a version of it, and every person who ate it at the Ward's counter compared it to the one they grew up with. Not whether the cafeteria's meatloaf was good, but whether it was close enough to the one you remembered. And most of the time, against all logic and industrial-scale cooking, it was. A slice of meatloaf on a department store plate should not have been able to do that. But it did, for decades, until the doors closed and the ovens went cold and the only meatloaf left was the one you had to make yourself. Creamed corn made from actual cream and butter appeared in serving lines across American schools throughout the 1970s. Cafeteria workers opened industrial-sized cans of corn and transformed them into something rich by adding cream, butter, and sometimes a touch of sugar. The dish was silky, sweet, and satisfying in ways that plain corn never achieved. Children who might refuse vegetables often accepted creamed corn because it tasted almost like dessert. The fat content made it filling, and the preparation made it palatable to even the pickiest eaters. When dietary fat became the enemy, creamed corn disappeared from menus, replaced by plain kernels that children promptly ignored. The irony is that the cream and butter helped children actually consume their vegetables while providing fat-soluble vitamin absorption. Removing the richness didn't make children healthier. It just made them eat fewer vegetables altogether. Number 16, the hamburger platter. A quarter-pound patty on a sesame seed bun with lettuce, tomato, onion, pickles, and a pile of crinkle-cut fries on the side. This was the meal that anchored the entire cafeteria menu. The patty came frozen, cooked on the flat top, and served within minutes. The fries came out of a deep fryer that had been running all day. The whole platter sat on an oval paper plate, and you carried it on a brown tray to your seat. Teenagers on their lunch break ate it. Truck drivers stopping in for a battery ate it. Families split one between 2 kids and called it lunch. Nobody drove across town for it. But if you were already inside that Kmart and you were hungry, the hamburger platter was the safest bet on the board. Peanut butter sandwiches made with full-fat peanut butter and white bread were cafeteria staples that delivered protein and satisfaction in every bite. The peanut butter was thick, rich, and often contained added sugar that made it appealing to children who might otherwise reject protein sources. Cafeteria workers spread it generously on soft bread, sometimes adding grape jelly to create the classic combination that fueled generations. The fat content kept children satisfied through afternoon classes, preventing blood sugar crashes. When nutrition reformers targeted fat and sugar simultaneously, peanut butter became suspect despite being nutrient-dense. Schools switched to reduced-fat versions that tasted like cardboard and natural versions that children refused. Modern nutritionists have embraced full-fat peanut butter as an excellent protein source, acknowledging that the fats it contains are predominantly healthy and that moderate sugar improves palatability without causing harm. Number 19. The Turkey Club Sandwich. This was the one that separated the Kmart cafeteria from the snack bar down the road. 3 layers of toasted white bread, sliced turkey, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise, cut into triangles and held together with frilled toothpicks. It sat taller on the plate than anything else on the menu, and it looked like it belonged in a real diner. The turkey was pre-sliced deli meat, the same kind you could buy by the pound at the store's own deli counter. The bacon was cooked in batches on a sheet pan, sometimes crisp, sometimes limp. The toast varied by location. Some places used thick bread. Others used whatever came off the delivery truck that morning. But none of that mattered, because the Turkey Club was the prestige order. It was the meal people bought when they were treating themselves. A woman shopping alone on her birthday. A grandfather taking his grandchild to Kmart for the first time and wanting to make it feel like an occasion. You sat down with that triple-stacked sandwich and felt like you had made a real decision, not just pointed at whatever was closest to the register. It cost more than everything else on the cafeteria menu, but more was still not much. Most people ate every crumb. Some still remember the toothpicks more than the sandwich. Those little plastic swords in red or green that children pocketed and pretended were weapons all the way through the parking lot. Vanilla pudding cups made with whole milk, real sugar, and egg yolks were cafeteria desserts that delivered genuine satisfaction in small portions. The pudding was cooked until thick, poured into individual cups, and chilled until it set into that perfect wobbling consistency. The vanilla was real extract rather than artificial flavoring, creating depth that synthetic versions could never match. Children eagerly consumed these pudding cups, absorbing calcium and protein along with the sweetness they craved. The portion sizes were modest, teaching moderation rather than deprivation. When artificial sweeteners and fat-free alternatives arrived, pudding cups became chemical experiments that children recognized as fake and rejected accordingly. The original versions had been achieving nutritional goals through palatability rather than restriction, a lesson that modern school nutrition programs have largely forgotten in their pursuit of impossible standards. Number 24. The hot dog on a steamed bun. It sat in a warmer under a heat lamp, rolling slowly on those little metal rods. The bun came from a bag, steamed soft in a compartment underneath. You grabbed a tray, pointed at the one you wanted, and the attendant dropped it into a paper sleeve. Mustard, ketchup, and relish sat in squeeze bottles at the condiment station. No one asked what brand the hot dog was. No one cared. The whole thing cost pocket change, and it tasted exactly the same in every Kmart from Topeka to Tampa. Your father bought one while your mother was still 3 aisles deep in the fabric section. By the time she came back with her cart, he had already finished and was pretending he had not eaten anything. Canned fruit cocktail in heavy syrup was dessert disguised as nutrition, and cafeterias served it proudly. Those cubed peaches, pears, grapes, and cherries floated in sugared liquid that made fruit acceptable to children who might otherwise reject it entirely. The syrup was thick, sweet, and genuinely delicious, transforming institutional fruit into something children requested rather than avoided. Lunch ladies spooned generous portions into small bowls, and children ate every bite. When sugar became the new dietary villain, heavy syrup disappeared in favor of fruit packed in juice or water that children largely refused to finish. The original version delivered vitamins, fiber, and the simple pleasure of sweetness that made school lunches bearable. Modern thinking suggests that moderate sugar consumption, particularly attached to actual fruit, poses minimal health risk compared to the processed alternatives children consume today. Number 14. The meatloaf dinner. A thick slice of ground beef meatloaf with a ribbon of ketchup glaze across the top, served with a scoop of mashed potatoes and a pile of green beans from a can. This was the plate that made the Kmart cafeteria feel like a real restaurant. Not because the meatloaf was exceptional, because the presentation was. A real plate, a real fork, and a meal with 3 distinct sections that looked like something your mother would have set on the table at 6 on a Wednesday. The meatloaf was baked in long pans in the back, sliced to order, and held in a warmer until someone pointed at it through the glass. The mashed potatoes came from a box, reconstituted with water and butter, and no one in the history of that cafeteria ever complained. The green beans sat in a steam tray, soft and salty, the kind that fall apart if you look at them too long. Retirees ordered the meatloaf dinner more than anyone else. It was the meal that reminded them of home without requiring them to cook. A widow who could not bring herself to make a full meatloaf for one person could walk into Kmart, sit down, and eat the same meal she used to serve a family of 5. She did not have to set the table. She did not have to wash the pan. She just ate. That is what made the meatloaf dinner more than a daily special. It was permission to sit down and be fed, even when you lived alone. Some locations listed it as the Blue Plate Special, a name borrowed from the old lunch counters of the 1940s. The price never climbed much, and for most of its run, it included a drink. Pork chops with applesauce represented the kind of balanced meal that cafeterias assembled without apology throughout the 1970s. Bone-in pork chops were seasoned simply and cooked until done, their edges slightly crispy while the meat inside remained juicy. The applesauce, often homemade or minimally processed, provided sweetness that complemented the savory pork in a combination dating back centuries. Children received complete protein, iron, and the satisfaction of eating recognizable food rather than processed alternatives. The fat in the pork chops provided essential nutrients and kept children satisfied until their next meal. When fat restrictions arrived, pork was replaced with lean proteins that children found dry and unappetizing. The original meal had been nutritionally complete and genuinely delicious, qualities that proved impossible to replicate with the reduced fat alternatives that followed. Number 15, the patty melt. A thin beef patty between 2 slices of grilled rye bread with melted Swiss cheese and caramelized onions. Not every location had this one, but the ones that did treated it like a point of pride. The bread was buttered and pressed flat on the grill until it crisped on both sides, sealing the cheese in a layer that stretched when you pulled the halves apart. The onions were cooked low and slow, sweet and dark and slightly burned at the edges. It was a diner classic that had no business being in a department store. But there it was, on the menu next to nachos and fountain drinks. The people who knew about the patty melt never ordered anything else. The women who worked behind those cafeteria counters rarely showed up in any company photograph or annual report. They wore hairnets and polyester aprons and stood on rubber mats for 8 hours in front of equipment that was never the right temperature. They memorized the regulars. They knew the man in the brown jacket wanted his coffee black and his grilled cheese cut in half. They knew the woman who came every Thursday with her granddaughter always ordered the same soup. None of this was in their job description. None of it earned them a raise, but it turned a fluorescent lit counter in the middle of a department store into something that felt, for a few minutes at a time, like a place where someone knew your name. That vanished before the menu did. Fried chicken cooked in lard emerged from cafeteria kitchens with crackling skin and juicy meat that modern baked versions cannot replicate. The chicken pieces were seasoned, dredged in flour, and submerged in hot rendered pork fat until the coating turned golden and crunchy. The lard created a seal that kept moisture inside while developing flavors that vegetable oils simply cannot produce. Children lined up eagerly on fried chicken days, knowing they would receive something that tasted like celebration rather than obligation. The saturated fat in lard was later demonized, but modern research shows it poses no greater health risk than the vegetable oils that replaced it. Those original fried chicken pieces represented genuine cooking craft, techniques that disappeared when fear replaced knowledge in school kitchens. The replacement baked chicken was dry, bland, and largely rejected by children who remembered what real fried chicken tasted like. Number 12, Salisbury steak. A seasoned ground beef patty shaped into an oval, pan-fried and smothered in brown mushroom gravy. It came with mashed potatoes or rice and a roll on the side. The Kmart version sat in a steam tray, the gravy pooling around the edges, thick enough to hold a spoon at an angle. It looked like a TV dinner come to life. And for a lot of people, that was exactly the appeal. You recognized it. You knew what it would taste like before the first bite. There was comfort in that certainty. Salisbury steak showed up the same way every time, in every location, for years. Mushrooms optional, onion gravy in some stores. The patty always slightly too large for the plate, hanging over the edge like it did not quite fit. Full-fat cottage cheese in individual cups was a protein staple that appeared alongside canned peaches and crackers on countless 1970s lunch trays. The curds were creamy, slightly tangy, and substantial enough to constitute a meal component rather than an afterthought. Children received the same full-fat version their parents ate at home because nobody had yet decided to remove the fat that made cottage cheese palatable. The texture was rich rather than watery, and the flavor was mild enough for children, while satisfying enough to constitute real nutrition. When low-fat versions replaced the original, cottage cheese became something children recognized as diet food and promptly rejected. The full-fat version had been delivering protein, calcium, and genuine satisfaction in perfect balance. Removing the fat destroyed both the taste and the nutritional completeness that made it worth serving in the first place. Number 21. The chef salad. Iceberg lettuce, sliced ham, turkey, a hard-boiled egg, shredded cheese, and a tomato wedge, all arranged in a clear plastic dome. The dressing came in a sealed packet, usually ranch or Thousand Island. It was the meal people ordered when they wanted to feel responsible. Wives picked at it while their husbands ate a cheeseburger 2 seats over. The lettuce was always cold, the egg always slightly gray around the yolk. You could see that clear dome from across the cafeteria, catching the light. You either wanted it or you walked right past. What the Kmart cafeteria really sold was time. Not food, time. A mother with 3 children and a cart full of layaway pickups needed 20 minutes to herself, and the cafeteria gave her that. A retiree with nowhere to be could sit with a cup of coffee and a grilled cheese and watch the store move around him for the better part of an hour. No one asked him to leave. No one checked on his table. The food was beside the point, and everyone behind that counter understood it. The prices stayed low because the cafeteria was never a profit center. It was a reason to stay in the building. The longer you stayed, the more you bought on the way out. Every department store in America knew this. Kmart just did it with cheaper plates. Milk in those little glass bottles was the standard beverage in every American school cafeteria before the fat-free revolution changed everything. Each child received an 8-ounce serving of full-fat milk that delivered calcium, protein, and fat-soluble vitamins in their natural proportions. The milk arrived cold from local dairies, often within days of being collected from regional farms. Lunch ladies set bottles on trays without question because nobody had yet decided that saturated fat was the enemy. Children drank it with cookies, sandwiches, and hot meals because that was simply what milk was. The government's dietary guidelines of 1977 marked the beginning of the end, pushing schools towards skim alternatives that stripped away nutrients. Modern research has rehabilitated whole milk entirely, showing that children who drink full-fat dairy maintain healthier weights than those drinking reduced-fat versions. Number 23. The tuna salad sandwich. It sat in a refrigerated case near the register, wrapped in cellophane with a small sticker showing the date. Chunky tuna mixed with mayonnaise, a little celery, salt, and pepper, all pressed between 2 slices of soft white bread. Some locations served it on a croissant, but most stuck with plain bread and a side of coleslaw in a small plastic cup. The tuna salad was made every morning in the back, scooped into portions, and wrapped before the store opened. By 2 in the afternoon, they were usually gone. It was the kind of sandwich you ate without thinking about, the kind that filled you up and left you satisfied on a tight budget. Retirees ordered it with a cup of coffee and sat in the cafeteria reading the newspaper for an hour. Lard-based pie crusts appeared in cafeteria desserts with a flakiness that modern vegetable shortening versions simply cannot achieve. The rendered pork fat created layers in the pastry that shattered at the first bite, releasing buttery richness that complemented every filling from apple to cherry to chocolate cream. School bakers understood that lard was the secret to proper pie crust, a technique passed down through generations of American cooking. The crust was tender yet sturdy enough to hold generous fillings without becoming soggy. When animal fats became dietary villains, schools switched to vegetable shortening that contained the very trans fats we now know to be dangerous. The lard had been the healthier option all along, providing stable saturated fats that the body processes efficiently. Those original pie crusts represented genuine baking craft, not the processed shortcuts that replaced them. Modern chefs have rediscovered lard's superiority, but school cafeterias lost this knowledge decades ago. Number 18. Chili with crackers. Thick, dark, beefy chili served in a styrofoam bowl with a sleeve of saltines on the side. Ground beef, kidney beans, tomato sauce, onion powder, and enough seasoning to turn the batch a deep brick red. It sat in a crock behind the counter and got ladled out a cup at a time. Some locations topped it with shredded cheese for a few cents extra. Most people just crushed their crackers into the bowl and stirred. It was a cold weather order. In northern states, it moved fast from October through March. Down south, it showed up year-round, but nobody wanted it in July. Frankfurters with natural casings appeared regularly on cafeteria menus, served in soft white buns with mustard and sometimes relish. These hot dogs snapped when bitten, the natural casing giving way to seasoned beef and pork that tasted like actual meat. The nitrates used for preservation became controversial in later decades, with health authorities warning about cancer risks that subsequent research has largely failed to confirm. Those preservatives prevented bacterial growth and created the characteristic cured flavor that made hot dogs satisfying. School lunch programs served millions of these frankfurters weekly without the hand-wringing that would come later. The protein was real, the portions were appropriate, and children ate them willingly. Modern science has softened considerably on nitrate concerns, noting that vegetables contain far higher levels than processed meats and that the cancer risk was dramatically overstated. Number 20. Chicken noodle soup. It came from a commercial pot and was ladled into a styrofoam cup or a shallow bowl, depending on the location. Wide egg noodles, small pieces of chicken, carrots cut into coins, and a broth that tasted like it had been simmering in the same pot for a decade. There was a soup station in most Kmart cafeterias with 2 or 3 options rotating through the week. Chicken noodle was always one of them. You did not order it because you craved it. You ordered it because you were cold or tired or waiting for a prescription at the pharmacy counter and you needed something warm in your hands. A pack of saltine crackers came with it, still sealed in the wrapper. Breakfast sausage links made from real pork with traditional seasonings appeared on morning meal trays throughout the 1970s. These small cylinders of seasoned meat delivered protein and fat that kept children focused through morning classes. The sausages were cooked until the casings crisped slightly, releasing savory aromas that made breakfast feel like an event rather than an obligation. Salt, sage, and pepper created the classic flavor profile that had sustained American breakfasts for generations. When sodium and fat restrictions arrived, sausage links were replaced with turkey versions that tasted like seasoned rubber. The original pork sausages had provided exactly what growing bodies needed for sustained energy and concentration. Modern research has largely exonerated moderate consumption of processed meats, particularly when balanced with vegetables and whole foods. Those breakfast sausages represented honest food that delivered flavor and nutrition without apology, a combination that modern reformers failed to replicate. Mash. Number 25. The grilled cheese sandwich, 2 slices of white bread, a layer of processed American cheese, and a flat-top grill that had been running since the store opened. The woman behind the counter pressed it with a spatula until both sides turned the color of a new penny. It came on a paper plate with a pickle spear and sometimes a handful of chips. Kids ordered it because they wanted it. Adults ordered it because it reminded them of the one their mother made on snow days. You could eat it standing up by the lunch counter or carry it on a tray to one of those bolted-down seats near the window. It was warm, it was fast, and it disappeared from every Kmart cafeteria without anyone noticing it was gone. tallow French fries represented a golden age of cafeteria cooking that health reformers dismantled with devastating efficiency. Those fries emerged from deep fryers filled with rendered beef fat, a cooking medium that McDonald's itself used until 1990. The exterior shattered with each bite while the interior remained fluffy and potato pure. School cooks received blocks of beef tallow from suppliers who understood that this was simply how frying was done. The fat created a crispy exterior that vegetable oils could never replicate, sealing the potato and preventing grease absorption. When the anti-saturated fat movement reached its peak, schools switched to partially hydrogenated vegetable oils, which we now know contained trans fats far more dangerous than anything in beef tallow. Those original fries were actually the healthier option. The tallow produced superior texture, better flavor, and posed no cardiovascular risk that modern science can identify. The switch to vegetable shortening created the actual health crisis. Number 22. Spaghetti with meat sauce. A mound of soft noodles sitting in a shallow bowl with a ladle of thick red sauce poured over the top. The meat was ground beef, browned and stirred into a tomato base that had been simmering all morning. Some locations added a breadstick. Others gave you a dinner roll wrapped in foil. Either way, you ate it with a plastic fork that bent if you twirled too hard. Nobody called it Italian. Nobody had to. For a family of 4 killing time at Kmart on a Saturday afternoon, it was a hot meal with no wait and no tip. Children dragged noodles across the table and nobody got upset about it. Egg salad sandwiches made with real mayonnaise and whole eggs were protein powerhouses that cafeterias served without hesitation throughout the 1970s. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped and mixed with full-fat mayonnaise, mustard, and seasonings until they reached that perfect creamy consistency. The combination delivered complete protein, healthy fats, and the kind of satisfaction that kept children focused through afternoon classes. Cafeteria workers made these in large batches, spreading the mixture generously between slices of soft white bread. When cholesterol fears reached their peak, eggs became dietary villains, despite millennia of safe consumption. Schools reduced egg offerings or switched to egg substitutes that children recognized as fake. Modern science has completely rehabilitated dietary cholesterol, showing that eggs pose no cardiovascular risk and actually improve nutrient absorption. Those original egg salad sandwiches had been delivering exactly what growing children needed. Number 17. The fish sandwich. A breaded square of white fish on a soft bun with tartar sauce and a leaf of lettuce. It looked almost identical to the one at every fast food chain, and it probably came from the same supplier. But the Kmart version had one advantage. You could eat it sitting down at a real table without walking across a parking lot. Fridays were the big day, especially in towns with a strong Catholic population during Lent. The cafeteria staff knew this and doubled the batch. By noon, the line for fish stretched past the popcorn machine. By 3, they were gone. Chicken fried steak with country gravy represented the pinnacle of Southern cafeteria cooking brought into schools across the region and beyond. Thin beef cutlets were tenderized, breaded in seasoned flour, and fried until golden before being draped in cream gravy made from pan drippings. This dish was unashamedly rich, delivering protein, fat, and carbohydrates in proportions that kept children focused through afternoon classes. Cafeteria workers took pride in their gravy, whisking flour into rendered fat until it thickened into something between sauce and sustenance. The smell alone drew children to the serving line with genuine anticipation. The dish disappeared when fat and sodium restrictions transformed school menus into exercises in culinary deprivation. Modern research suggests that occasional consumption of such traditional preparations poses no meaningful health risk to active children who burn calories throughout the day. Number 11. Beef stew. Chunks of beef, potatoes, carrots, celery, and onion in a thick brown gravy served in a deep bowl with a roll on the side. The stew pot went on early in the morning and stayed on all day. By lunchtime, the potatoes had started to dissolve into the broth, thickening it into something closer to gravy than soup. The beef was tender by then, falling apart when you pressed it with a spoon. It was not glamorous food. It was the kind of meal that made you forget you were sitting under fluorescent lights in a department store. Truck drivers ate it. Grandparents ate it. Stock clerks on break ate it, standing up because there were no open seats. The stew did not care who you were, same bowl for everyone. Real butter pats in foil wrappers accompanied nearly every hot roll, cornbread square, and biscuit that emerged from 1970s cafeteria kitchens. These small rectangles of churned cream represented thousands of years of human nutrition science compressed into convenient individual servings. Children peeled back the wrapper and spread golden fat onto warm bread without anyone suggesting this was dangerous. The butter melted into every crevice, adding richness and satisfaction to meals that might otherwise feel institutional. When margarine replaced butter in the name of heart health, schools unknowingly introduced trans fats that proved genuinely harmful. The butter had been protecting children all along, providing vitamin A, vitamin K2, and healthy saturated fats that growing bodies needed. Modern nutritionists have reversed decades of butter demonization, acknowledging that this whole food never deserved its villainous reputation. Number 13, chicken fried steak. A thin piece of cube steak pounded flat, dredged in seasoned flour, and fried until the crust crackled when you cut into it. White gravy poured over the top and a side of mashed potatoes. This was a Southern staple that found its way into Kmart cafeterias nationwide, even in states where nobody had heard of it. The gravy was thick, peppery, and made from the drippings in the same pan. Nothing about it was light. Nothing about it was trying to be. You sat down with a chicken fried steak at Kmart and you were not getting up quickly. It slowed the whole afternoon down. Chocolate milk with real sugar and cocoa was the reward every child hoped for during lunch period. This wasn't the artificially sweetened, chemically flavored version that would come later. This was real cocoa powder mixed with whole milk and cane sugar, creating something that tasted like dessert but delivered genuine nutrition. Cafeteria workers mixed it in large batches, the dark sweetness swirling into the white milk until it turned that perfect shade of brown. Children who finished their vegetables often received chocolate milk as encouragement, a system that worked because the drink was genuinely delicious. When the sugar wars began, chocolate milk became a casualty despite the fact that its sugar content was minimal compared to the sodas children would drink at home. Scientists now argue that chocolate milk's combination of protein, calcium, and carbohydrates makes it superior to most alternatives. The sugar helped children actually consume the milk, which was the entire point. Baked beans with salt pork or bacon appeared as a side dish that transformed simple legumes into something children actually wanted to eat. The beans were slow-cooked with molasses, mustard, and chunks of cured pork that rendered their fat into the sauce while adding smoky depth. The result was sweet, savory, and satisfying in ways that plain beans could never achieve. Cafeteria workers understood that the pork fat made the beans palatable and provided essential calories for active children. When fat restrictions arrived, the pork disappeared, and the beans became something children pushed around their trays without eating. The protein and fiber in beans required fat for proper nutrient absorption, making the original recipe nutritionally superior to any reduced fat alternative. Those baked beans had been achieving what modern fat-free versions cannot, getting children to consume healthy legumes willingly by making them genuinely delicious. White bread rolls fresh from the oven accompanied nearly every hot lunch served in 1970s cafeterias. These soft, pillowy rounds of refined flour were everything whole grain advocates would later condemn, yet they provided calories, comfort, and carbohydrates that active children burned through by afternoon recess. Cafeteria workers baked them on site in many districts, filling hallways with aromas that made children actually anticipate lunch. The bread was tender, slightly sweet, and perfect for soaking up gravy or spreading with butter. When whole grain mandates arrived, schools replaced these beloved rolls with dense brown alternatives that children threw away in alarming quantities. The white bread had been doing its job, delivering energy and satisfaction to children who needed both. Modern nutritional science acknowledges that refined grains in moderate amounts pose no particular health threat to active growing children. That counter is gone. The vinyl stools, the heavy plates, the women in white who served every portion by hand. But these 25 meals do not need a department store to exist. They need a stove, a few ingredients, and someone willing to sit down at the table instead of eating standing up. If you grew up eating at a Ward's Cafeteria, tell me which plate you always went back for. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Until then, take care of yourself and cook something worth sitting down for.